Joining us now on Practical 365 is Paula Januszkiewicz. Hi, Paula. Welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much.
I am great. And, of course, joining us is Bastiaan. Hi, how are you?
Not too bad. Good to see you again.
And you're going to be joining us, Paula, at Tech. So the Practical 365 crew is going to be there.
Yes.
Obviously, Quest are putting it on, and you're going to be doing the keynote. But before we talk a bit more about your specialist subjects, for those that don't know you, which I assume is people who've been living under a rock, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and the company that you run as well?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure also to be able to be engaged in the event as always and cooperating with you guys. And so I've been as simple as this, dealing with cybersecurity for the past 20 years. 16 years ago, I have established a company that is called CQURE, and we are literally working worldwide. So we are based in the US, in Switzerland, in Dubai as well, and in Poland. So we've got some locations here, and eventually my team, at the very beginning, I was the only one. But right now, my team is bigger, and we deal with different cybersecurity challenges, helping customers to build their good cybersecurity posture. But we're doing this through the infrastructure consulting, mainly pen testing as well, which we are specializing in. Also the incident response, forensics, we've got our academy. So, things changed and there's so many things that we do, but all of that is cybersecurity. And we like to map ourselves as cybersecurity architects, kind of like this.
And when I've seen you and some of your colleagues present at other conferences, tech in the past, one thing that sort of sets them apart is it's quite demo heavy, isn't it? You watch it and it's not a dry topic to watch, but when you do it, and is that something that's like a conscious thing, like you're bringing it to life so people watch it and go, oh, it's that easy for someone to do that?
Thank you for noticing. This is cool. Yes. So my kind of like little ambition always for the presentation is that there must be a live demo, because it brings adrenaline to many, including myself. Because what if things fail? But at the end, a demo must bring the value. So at the end, it needs to showcase something live, something that we can encounter, maybe even on everyday basis while we are auditing the infrastructures. Maybe something not very common as well, but definitely something practical, something that we are seeing at the customer side, so that people can be just taking that demo and treating it as a nice value, so that they're going to be like, okay, like you mentioned, but then they're going to be like, haha, what do I do to take it to my infrastructure and then fix all these issues? So that's mainly the goal. And that's what the live demo is for.
And your customers range from all sorts, don't they? The one thing that I always notice is that the least protected, both by Microsoft and others, is small businesses without IT. They don't get to see this sort of stuff, do they? Unfortunately.
But they are usually the ones that get affected most because they don't have the big security teams in place.
Well, I said on one of the previous podcasts, my brother-in-law phoned me. He runs a small business, and he said, everyone's got an email from me. And I looked, and it was from Microsoft 365. And I had a look in his tenant, and I didn't set it up really for him, but it had all the controls off. And he clicked a link. And he had 2 applications installed, and someone had used SharePoint scripting to send out and share documents to all his contacts. It caused havoc for him for days. But there's no way that he'd have ever had a Paula or even any sort of IT person, apart from phoning me, which is probably not the best, a reasonable option, I hope, to fix it for him. Obviously, I put in the right controls after that. But do you give out a lot of great advice to people? What do you think of those sort of smaller businesses? Should it be Microsoft or someone else protecting them?
Well, very good question. Definitely, and it's a big challenge, yes, because these kind of organizations usually do not implement, or they even don't want to. Sometimes they may not even have the possibility to implement enterprise solutions. Yeah, but the good point is that also for the Office 365 and so on, you've got a different options already in the small packages that you are able to turn on in order to assure the baseline security, at least, which is already something that minimizes the risk. So things like multi-factor authentication, that's the base. Also, there is a possibility to introduce different security features for and within the emails, so that we're going to be making sure that we're not, even though we click on the link first, when we may not even get that email because it's going to be considered phishing, but then if possibly that goes through, because it might be sent maybe even from a colleague from the other company, that account has been hacked, then basically we're not going to be taken into the spot where user is able to fall into a trap. So it might sound easy, but at the same time, these solutions are there. And honestly, even for the big customers, that sometimes it's a challenge. One of our customers from the oil and gas industry, they've been actually almost breached because eventually hackers managed to cross many gates, but then they got them and they kicked them out. So that was good. So this is a spoiler story here. But the thing was that there was a company that was supporting everybody in the region from a recycling perspective. And that company has been hacked into. They managed to get access to their SharePoint. And basically, they were sending to the all companies around invoices like usual, because they figured the logic.
Yeah.
But the invoices were not the PDF as a regular attachment, but a link to the link file, so the link to the URL file, so two things, that was placed in the SharePoint originally of that company.
Wow.
So it's kind of like a story, yeah?
So basically, if you clicked on the link, you would see a valid email address and a valid URL to a real company.
But this is from the same person, even. Yeah?
Yes.
And this is exactly what happened to my brother-in-law. So these stories, they're not just happening in these big companies. No. But the reason I mention it is when I saw it, it looked like a demo that you'd see in perhaps a session that you or one of your colleagues have done, and it's just it shows how real that stuff can be. But the impact on him was like he didn't he didn't want to hassle me, so for days he's going without email. This was it damages people's businesses. There's a real person or many people affected by these kind of incidents, which makes protecting against this stuff really important. And thank you for sharing all that you do. But I think we wanted to talk about the session that you've got, the keynote at Tech Europe coming up. And it's at the last Tech Europe, there was a lot of mentions about AI, and I don't think anything's changing this time around.
Yeah, well said. We'll just speak more about it, that's for sure. And there are some solutions that were new, popping up in the market, sometimes being AI, sometimes claiming that they're AI, sometimes it's just hard to check and so on, so you know the drill. But the thing is that we became definitely more aware when you compare it with the last year. And definitely we're looking towards solutions. So at the very beginning, AI was more like a question. Does it make sense? Can we trust it? Is it productive enough so that I can spend my time on it? But right now, it's not even a question. Yeah. So we took a decision, and then we're like, okay, we use it anyway. Yeah. So we use it already in the professional environments, enterprise environments, but also for ourselves. And that's it. And now it's a question, of course, how do we use it effectively? Can we really even boost ourselves more? Can we boost cybersecurity more? Can we make a threat recognition and investigation even smoother? So that's pretty much a natural growth that we are seeing, that we just look towards even more solutions that we can get.
And, one thing that we've asked Microsoft and other security guests, over the last couple of years, really, since probably Meta. I think originally there was a Llama model that was accidentally released, and and then so Meta with the Llama models, I think Alibaba with Qwen models and so on, various open weights models that you can take and very, very quickly uncensor them to do whatever you want. Yeah. And you can run them. Like Bastiaan has a 4090, an RTX 4090. Face games, but he could probably use it. He could use it for some quite,
nice
dangerous
LLM
stuff. Yes, you could fine tune that in a couple of hours, I suppose. And that, my biggest worry has been, not how I can solve problems for my customers, but since learning about a lot of that stuff, I've been thinking, well, what is going to happen in the security industry? Because you can use it to automate a lot of stuff. And that's why your session looks really interesting to me, because I don't see the same cold face as you. So I'm wondering, what's starting to happen out there? What is an AI-driven attack these days like? Is it as bad as I'm worrying, or worse? Or is it taking on a completely different form altogether?
Very good question. And AI-driven attacks, well, it depends on what kind of tools we are engaging. Yeah. So sometimes we may basically rely on automation and some logic use of the findings that we maybe manage to find. Sometimes we can leverage AI to find for vulnerabilities. And that's basically what the various platforms are already doing, which it's kind of interesting because we can use it, of course, for better. But then if someone earns money on it, on writing exploits and so on, then this is also job opportunity, of course, as long as it's done ethically and so on. But of course, in the unethical hands, then we are able to search for vulnerabilities faster, never announce them anywhere, use them in the malicious way, maybe, in order to get gains. But at the same time, the good thing is that how much of the possibility to exploit these vulnerabilities changed across the years. And the very generic answer here is that it didn't change much. So knowing how vulnerabilities exploit, what they can do, and which possibly components of the operating systems they could use, and so on, we are already aware of our environments. And then if we do have anti-exploitation prevention solutions, if we do use the XDR, if we correlate the events, if we monitor things, if we know what's executing, where this thing is connecting, who is doing that, and stuff like that, then this is a great risk minimizing case. Because maybe even we could have a bug in the anti-exploitation solution in the worst case. But okay, that things happen here, but would this person be able to do the lateral movement somewhere else without us really noticing this? So things become noisy today, of course, in a well-established environment. So that's what we kind of think about. But most of the environments aren't really that well established. So this is missing, that's missing. They are aware about some settings that they haven't really touched for years, maybe. And when we deal with these kind of situations, then, that's definitely a challenge, because there is more of a possibility to exploit things and same possibility for securing in the companies that don't grow themselves.
So from your perspective, when it comes now to the example that Steve had, how can smaller companies leverage large language models, and how would you recommend that they set them up to defend for breaches and actually increase their security posture?
Yeah, very good question. So still platforms like Office 365 and so on allow us some level of a central management. And then we are still able to use different security features to support us. And there is also the Defender part that we are able to leverage, depends on the size, of course, and the possibility of the company. But within the Defender XDR, we've got a possibility to correlate different events. And honestly, Defender or just something else, but that's the direction that I'm heading to. So you've got solutions that are allowing you to already introduce something that, let's say 5, maybe 6, or maybe even 4 years ago, we were really dreaming about. For example, to me, the most important part after the incident is what's going on, did it spread, And these two questions I need to be able to answer. And how can we do it if we don't know what was executing? So just process execution. Who did that? Connection, like all these things, they must be on the checklist, and they usually are there. And on the top of that, we put a correlation. So that's already enough.
So when it comes to this, sorry, Steve, but when it comes to this, how have your horror stories from the field changed over the last 4 or 5 years with the advent of AI and large language models?
Oh, that's a very good question. Because, like, in the past, there were many horrible stories one by one. So every story was a little horrible here and there. But now we can see the incentive for growth. So more like customers are like, okay, we want to have a check. But then it appears that, maybe we managed to become a domain admin, but under certain conditions. Or maybe we did, but the risk is kind of low because then we were inside in the infrastructure. And whatever the conditions are, like, we see the challenge. Yeah, we see the challenge. It's not very big, but there is one. Yeah. And the stories, when we talk about them, is rather that these types of companies that basically started to invest in cybersecurity, they're not experiencing these situations anymore, at least within my bubble, so to say.
Yeah.
But if there is something that's happening for real today, it's a big drama, big deal. And the customer is like smashed. And then, like precisely why, and sorry to say that, but then you see that they didn't really manage different things in a way how they should. The hygiene in the administration wasn't really there. And that's what happened. Yeah. So we've got some customers like that were completely smashed because with ransomware and stuff like that, without always the possibility to recover because of the hygiene.
Yeah.
And the tools that people are using, are they changing with the advent of AI? Because I don't know if it's an outdated word, but years ago we used to call it script kiddies, or people buy a package that they use, or groups all use the same set of tools. But I would imagine with an uncensored large parameter coding model, I could ask it to make a similar tool set or adjust a tool set and just create one on a whim, for whatever my needs are. If I got into a business, because from what I've heard, you're saying that they're not evolving, threats aren't evolving in a particular way. There's more of them and people can do them, in an easier way. So, and how would that be? You leverage AI to help them be more efficient at their job, which is destroying your company or holding your company to ransomware. And is that how things are likely to change, or or hasn't that moved yet? Do people still have time to get ahead of this by investing in cybersecurity?
Well, that very, very nicely framed question. From what angle? The script kiddies, but it's kind of like script kiddies. By the way, they sound a little negative, don't they? Yeah. So it's like the guys that want to do stuff, but they don't know quite how to do it, but they still do it and they manage somehow. Maybe they're lucky. Yeah, so kind of like this. But when you think about the guys that are like generating the threats today with AI, I wouldn't really call them script kiddies. I would rather call them productive guys.
They
Efficient
use
guys.
efficient, exactly, modern technology to be even better and to even hide from any threat. Okay.
I suppose it's the old, like, when you know enough to be dangerous, but from a different context. Yes. Obviously, they've got enough. I think with these coding models, you don't have to be an expert in the thing.
Yeah,
it's a bit like being able to understand a language rather than speak it, right? Yes, this is gonna. I can see what it's doing. Yes, I can see it's going to do the thing that I want. Let's have a go. I don't care what damage it does. I suppose it's a bit like that, which to me sounds like a script kiddie, which is some,
productive script kiddie.
A smart one that's going to use what tools they've got, and it's a tool that they can use to create stuff. And it's efficient.
It's efficient. Yeah, exactly. That's my point. So there is nothing really bad about that. I mean, of course, the result is bad and they're doing bad things and stuff like this. But this is, I would say, the way of doing things. and everybody does it kind of like this way. It's just a matter of more or less, but everybody does this way. So you don't really need to understand fully things in order to be able to execute things at the end today, which I'm looking at it in a positive way, kind of like, yeah, it's a danger because of course threat can come from anywhere, and like everybody can sit in front of the keyboard and prompt the stuff that's going to work, that's going to do the damage. But this also should make us think, because if that's the case, then we could be like, oh no, so there is like anybody not advanced, but just with the idea of harming me that has a possibility to actually harm me. So I definitely need to rethink and redesign my infrastructure so that I can prevent that line. And that's why I'm thinking that it's actually quite an easy to mitigate thing, because you are like, okay, that's what can happen. So you cross the line, you implement security over there, you move one level up maybe, or half a level up, and then you're fine. Yeah. So it's an easy to address problem, but easy also to cause problem. So, but cybersecurity, what would it be if it wasn't about the growth?
So someone might have a few years ago said, okay, we had an intrusion, we didn't really have the software to monitor where they went, but because we got on it reasonably quickly, with the balance of probabilities, we're probably fine. But I suppose that is saying the reality could be actually you probably need to assume that they've done more than you think. Because you might have said, well, there's a small chance, yes, we'll get an investigation going, but we'll probably be fine. But they could get in and say, and get a problem. Explain to me what a lateral attack is. Help me build a tool. Tell me the best tools that I can get and where I can get them from, or whatever. They could almost work out as they go along in a few hours. Whereas, I suppose previously it'd be harder to do. I don't know. I don't know whether there's a Jolly Rogers cookbook that hackers use, for example, these days. Is that a term you're allowed to use, or does that get you arrested by the FBI? I don't know. But do you know what I mean? I don't know what that. I don't frequent these forums. I don't know what they do there, how much they know. How do you get ahead of it? Do you need to be as ahead as I'm perhaps over worrying about after hearing that they're probably going to do everything?
Yeah, so I think information is power. Yeah, so that's the first thing. Well, maybe not even that I think that, it's kind of is power over there. That at the end, more the better you are able to prepare yourself and attack a certain target. We do also the red teaming activities, and like in the longer terms, I'm not that much of a big fan of them, but that's definitely fun because it allows the customers to test themselves from the different angles. Depends, of course, how much time we got and all the details, but in general, that's a kind of a nice exercise. So what we gather during that phase, so assuming that we have a perfectly aligned time for all of the activities, then we are basically gathering information about the employees. What do they do about the building? What do they eat? Where do they go to the gym and kids and everything? Yeah, so it's kind of creepy, but at the end, that's basically what creates the profiles of people that we can attack. And I mean, no mercy.
And it always sounds like that early 2000 TV show Alias, where it's not the CIA, but they're pretending to be something like that, and they're getting into companies, steal information. But a place I used to work, we had a team that did that. They always made out it was so much fun, like they're sneaking into companies. Is it really as fun as it sounds?
Yep. What can I say?
Wrong career.
It's a cool job. Definitely.
I heard from one of your colleagues that in one of the stints, you guys modified a water cooler.
Oh, that's interesting that you mentioned that. Wow, you remember? Yes, and actually we recorded even a little movie about that. And
can you kind of tell what you guys did?
Yeah, totally. So this was basically, it's cool that you mentioned this. I wasn't expecting that. So here we go. So we did, we modified, like a water, like a dispenser that was basically there. And there were two kind of like a major ideas. So one was that we pretended to be people that were replacing the bottle that you normally put in over there and stuff like this. And then inside we mounted like an access point. So within the access point, and we hooked that into the network and stuff like that, so that we are able to first access it, and second that we got like an access to the network. Yeah. So and we were like running it for good time over there. And also, if we could listen to conversations to people in the kitchen and so on, because all the cool conversations are happening in the kitchen. So that's a perfect spot. And
all the water cooler moments.
Right. And then later we recorded a video. It is our secure production where there is a water cooler that is, he's actually the main evil character getting into the company and hacking people's conversations, and he's actually moving in the office. So anyway, but to the serious stuff, we did that. And one of the ideas for the same project, by the way, besides that, was actually to steal a car from the parking. and we managed to get to the parking. We got everything over there already, but the car wasn't there because they were driving it actually, like someone just used it at that moment. Yeah.
Oh, no.
So drove it away, and we were like, yeah. But of course, if everything was there in place, it was quite a way to get there. This was just the last step that we would just like tick. So yeah, we would consider that kind of done. Yeah,
it's like James Bond.
It's actually cooler than you would think. I've heard these stories before. It's like, we snuck past security, or we're pretending to be cleaners. But these are even better. It's actually putting a bug in the office, having to steal a car and get paid for it,
and get paid for it,
and you can't get arrested. This is. I feel like
it's diabolical. It's right up your alley, Steve. I mean, you've got a wrong job.
I don't think anyone needs more middle-aged blokes doing stuff though. So these days,
it's a character. You need to put the character, but also it's quite interesting how many people are not expecting things to happen. Yeah. So, for example, even like when I was doing different social engineering projects, people are not expecting me to be the evil person because I'm always happy, I'm rather smiling and stuff like that. Yeah, so you would totally not match that. It's something opposite. Yeah, so that even helps, So like that makes me even more happy.
The most evil people, you need to watch out for them.
That's why I say alias, because it's someone that's trained to become a teacher. They've got a great personality. They're friendly. And they're sneaking into all these companies and stealing information. It does sound great fun. I can't imagine my kids wanted to do that as a job though.
This is definitely cool, but the thing is that to do it like all the time, there needs to be all the time the orders for it. Yeah. So let me put it this way, and to more realistic case. So we of course do projects like this within the year and so on, but it's not that you're doing this every year, or all the time, every day. Yeah. So sometimes, of course, there is like the regular pen test that we are doing. We're just checking for things. Sometimes there's an incident, and that's what I love the most because it's adrenaline. And but it's still cybersecurity. Cool job.
Yes, it certainly sounds a lot of fun, but it certainly sounds very stressful. And with I guess the AI factor being it's making the threat actors more productive, right? That's the sort of takeaway from it, which means that you need to be better at analysing your data, right? Have a better idea of what is happening and get ahead of that understanding, so you're not, as a lot of companies, I suppose, certainly used to be, on the back foot when an incident like this happens. And talking of being on the back foot then, do you see, or what's the worst, actually? What's the worst in memory of these sort of security snafus where, like when I've worked with a customer and we've done a scan, we found that there's problems with permissions and Active Directory accounts. That's almost seems like the most standard thing to happen. What's the worst that you can actually repeat?
Talk about.
So first, maybe let me mention the best. and then let's get into the worst.
Well, yeah, that's positive. Yeah.
So like, I think the best thing I saw in my life was the domain admin crying over the fact that I managed to become a domain admin. Yeah, so
I'm you now.
sorry, maybe that's brutal, but I think it was pretty neat.
He actually shed a physical tear. He actually shed a tear.
It was like,
wow.
Yeah, like this, yeah, and then he turned around and he left with like a head down, kind of like this, heartbroken.
Yeah.
So was that person convinced beforehand that it was not going to be possible? You know, that sort of smug look, like, yeah, right, you're not going to do this.
Kind of like that, but because he was very nervous, by the way, because this was his infrastructure, and I mean, understood, but. And I was trying to communicate things properly, and so he was still very, very nervous about that. So when I was sitting in a room and doing my stuff, he was like all the time, like passing by, and then he was like, "Oh, did you manage to do it? Did you manage?" I'm like, "No, I didn't yet. I didn't." And then the funny part was that actually, because there's one twist on the top of that too, I managed to become a local admin, and the local admin's password, let's say, was password 123. Let's say. Yeah, and then he comes in, and then I'm saying, and then he's like, "Okay, did you manage to get in?" And I'm like, "Yes, I did." And he's like, "Okay, so," and I said, "I managed to be an admin, but I didn't mention the domain, yeah, or either local." And he's like, "What's the password?" And I said, "Password 123." And then he said, "Oh no, you are a domain admin."
I mean, the first rule, surely, of being a system admin is Murphy's rule. I used to run a team. I had a Polish guy, Andre, that worked for me. He joined, and the first thing he put on the wall was Murphy's Law on the wall. Obviously, it's got a whole bunch of stuff, but at the bottom of the poster, anything that can go wrong will go wrong. Is what you sort of assume is going to happen, and expect Monday morning is going to be all about. So maybe that chap had been doing such a great job so far that
maybe he just realized
it just never happened.
Yeah. Maybe he just realized that we shouldn't reuse the password. Yeah, so here we go.
So that was the best. So what is the worst now? How bad can it get?
So it can get very, very bad, and it can get bad, and also at the end, this was a very, very horrible thing actually that happened to our customer, because it's like a production thing. So like a big production factory and stuff like that. And there is lots of things, lots of systems, OT, whatever, IT, OT, that are basically not so well protected. And it's the nature of the environment. But unfortunately, over there, that was a different case because their servers, SAP servers actually, that were supporting the production, got encrypted. And my job was to analyze it. And of course, to recover things, support them, and so on, if possible. Team was engaged too, but my job was basically to analyze the situation. And what I found out was that there was a domain admin accessing resources. Mm-hmm. And for me, kind of like knowing what I'm doing and what am I supposed to do at work, how do we pull out information in order to build a picture and stuff like this. I only saw the domain admin guy. And I was like, oh, what's going on? Like, why I don't see anything besides this guy, like how someone became a domain admin. I'm not seeing it. The only thing I'm seeing is that domain admin came, made a mess, and left. And the point is that amongst this frustration, we started to look for things in the internet, and my team was like, okay, you'll not believe this. And basically they shared with me the link to the GitHub of one guy that had over there the domain admin username and password in a clear text and that company name. And this was developer, that is the best, that was supporting them, a third-party guy. Yeah.
Oh, but you know that, that apart from it being in a public GitHub, I bet that's not too uncommon.
But you know, maybe not for the domain admin. Plus, the developer.
For domain admin, no, but SQL connection,
SQL connection strings, yeah.
Yeah, lots of cyber essential scans. The bits that I get caught in to help with, from what had been found, would be plain text files with passwords in on Linux servers and things like that. You know, what on the big long list of things that are not great, that would crop up a lot. And as a system admin, you get a company in, they install a system, the business analysts, whoever, pick the system and are going to run it, want you to give the third-party company free reign to install whatever it is on their servers. They want accounts created with terrible usernames and passwords. So I bet that's, you know, and also I've almost accidentally published a password into my GitHub when I've like been developing the stuff, and then I've accidentally kept in the config file rather than the example one.
Can happen.
So it's got to be a place to mine.
Yeah.
But you know, also this guy had like folders because he was supporting the other companies with the other company names, and same thing.
Oh, he intentionally did it. Well, intentionally put it into a GitHub and like synced it.
Well, you know, hard to say. I was like, okay, call the guy, yeah, and they called the guy, and he apologized. So
oh, he apologized after everyone logged in as domain admin. Yeah.
Well, at least that we're
least
safe.
he apologized.
We're safe. Yeah.
No.
I mean, there's got to be
The liability.
I suppose there's more of that out there, I suppose, but yeah, it doesn't get worse than that. You know, it's leveling up all of those things from plaintext files on a server to post-it notes to writing the password on a whiteboard or whatever.
Yeah, well, you know, at the end there's so many. Yeah, it's terrifying, definitely. And for that company, they were quite, you know, at the end they were quite sad, and they were devastated because they couldn't recover. That was the problem. Yeah, so at the end, like, this is just unbelievable what happened, and okay, but at the end they had to recover. So we were also supporting them whatever we could. And also technology stack was a challenge for them. So their recovery was very, very painful. But also they truly didn't have backup here and there and so on. And we might, of course, criticize that. But at the end, it's a horrible situation for everybody. Yeah. So they had to face it. They had to, like, you know, stop their business for a certain time. There was a big loss. And they decided, by the way, that's also an interesting one, to pay the ransom because, a lack of possibility with our complete disadvice for doing that. They still did that, and
they didn't.
No. They didn't manage to get it. So it was just like worse and worse and worse, and eventually they started to build the infrastructure from the scratch. So that's the end of this.
It's a funny story at the beginning, and then the more you think about it, the worse, the sadder it sounds, really, because things like that, they have a real impact on people. Even if you manage to successfully recover.
That's what I was thinking about.
IT people who have, you know, had to work for the night for weeks on end, exhausted by the end, and they're only back where they started in some cases.
Yeah.
And the people impact. I did have a customer who this happened to. They refused to pay the ransom. The owner was an 80-year-old man who was like, "No, I'm not paying any of that." But they ran a chain of shops. They had everything on paper. They hadn't modernised anything yet, so they lost a lot of stuff. But they were like, "Well, we'll just start again."
Company still ran.
Yeah. No? They could just.
So, what are you saying, Steve? We don't need to go into digital age.
Oh, no,
LLMs are over. We should put it all on paper.
Like anything, after this happened, the owner, who hadn't really seen the value in IT, he had them running everything on a shoestring. They were doing all sorts of strange stuff. They saw their value as running everything as cheaply as possible. That's what IT saw their value as. The cheaper, the better. Afterwards, obviously, they understood. But I suppose it's always taken...
It's an expensive lesson to be learned.
Yeah.
True. But, it's very good to hear these lessons, even though they're horrible and they bring some experience to us. For us, some things might seem to be completely unbelievable, but at the same time, not impossible. So it's important to hear them, and it's important to share them, because whatever they are, it's a story. It's a real story. Yeah. So at the end, people can get some conclusions from it here and there. So if that's our goal, that's great.
So let me ask you this. How often can you penetrate a production network by just reading the password lists from a dev or a test network?
Depends on the possibility to connect to it. Yeah. So I would say like that, but answer in general will be rather often, yeah, because like if there is a possibility to access it in a certain ways, then surely there's going to be something that shouldn't be there. Yeah, so
And it's identical to production, and
that's
9 out of
another
10
angle.
times.
That's another angle. But also, by the way, interesting story came to my mind. So I was analyzing actually one of the kind of like a telecom companies, let's say. So they're like a service provider. And what happened over there is that the developers, regarding what you said, they put on the server that they were testing into the internet. So it was accessible. Yeah. So of course, eventually it was accessed and stuff like that. There was quite a lot of different activities going on, not to assign it to anybody or the group or anybody, but at the end, there was quite a lot of things going on, and they spotted that because they were monitoring also the traffic usage and so on, and that server, by the way, has been used as a part of the DDoS attacks. Well,
Aye.
being and having that kind of a cool network with a good bandwidth, you've got lots of possibilities. And I was analyzing this. So there was basically a vulnerability within the app, and then hackers managed to take over a bunch of things. And then they set up the scripts over there, planted the whole environment over there. And then I could just see the timeline of the activities, what was there and stuff like that. But then, of course, they just cut it off and so on. So, but the process is important, yeah, because gladly that did not spread. It was like a standalone server over there. But good lesson as well.
Yeah.
And mentioned a couple of times is developers, and developers aren't necessarily the problem, but it sounds like lack of understanding of the tools your developers might use. Where I've heard system admins say, "Oh, they use Python." Well, so does a lot of things, but yeah, there's a lot of tools that people then might use that are 2 or 3 levels down from that in modules that publish an endpoint from their workstation to the internet, so a colleague at the side of the room or whatever, or working remotely, can see the thing they're working on. And those are quite commonly used, right? So it might not even be an intention to put it on the internet. So I suppose, how do you get around that, apart from understanding, what the stack is that your devs are using? Great firewalls, great software that can identify what's in use. Other ways to get ahead of that.
And awareness, it's something that we should maybe start even with, so that they will not be doing it. But also, their work environment has certain characteristic. Yeah, and that is, I think, should be first preset so that we can move within the frame that is allowed. And then this is really what secures the setup over there. But if it's going to be like the possibility to publish things here and there and so on, then why shouldn't they do it? And if there isn't an awareness on board, then that's where the problem begins. So I think that the setting up that frame could do the good start.
Have you worked with customers where they've got bits of the company where they're saying, we've got a startup culture, we've brought everyone Macs, see? We've got a nice, cool bit of this. I think this is like big, very big bank is in one case, where they want to get ahead of the startup competitors. So even they are doing a startup culture. We want to attract those people. That usually means not putting the controls on them in the same sort of way, right? Which, in one case, they've got their own security teams, allowing them to bypass this stuff.
Yeah, so I feel that maybe that's going to be too philosophical, but just my thought about it. That we live in time where, like, that need of growth, it's just so there that it's just probably putting in the shade all the other things that, like, they know maybe that they are important, but like everybody wants good funding, everybody wants good income, like stuff like this. So when we are talking about this, of course, because they got different goals, and you've got a certain, like, you can design things well, and cybersecurity in general being part of the process not necessarily has to slow things down, but I mean it does a little bit, yeah. And if that a little bit makes a difference, then like what they would choose. And it's really a decision of a leader. Someone may say like, okay, we put that security on, we do the regular pen testing and so on. Not only our whatever is amazing, but also secure. Okay, great. price this, then I would probably want to hear about it. So if there is a startup that kind of like does this, and when we are from the other angle and we want to buy it or we want to use it or whatever, then we should definitely ask for this, because of that strong incentive to grow that I think it just like makes the other things just simply less important.
Thank you so much for joining us on the show today. It's been massively appreciated. I honestly thought we were only going to get to talk to you for like 15 minutes or so, because to me, you always seem like such a busy person.
Yes.
Doing so many things. I think one tech, you were talking at a conference the day before that you came to join us. I'm like, I'll do 2 a year. So where'd you get the energy from? There's got to be a question we should have asked you. And the answer may have been disappointing that there's not a massive can of Red Bull somewhere. But thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
People can see you at Tech Europe shortly, and find you on social media. We'll put the links to everything Paula related on the Practical 365 website. But thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you so much, Paula. It's been such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.